12-year-old Miguel stood barefoot on a busy Manila street corner, the sun beating down on his small frame. His cracked old guitar hung loosely from his shoulder, its strings worn but still able to carry the weight of his voice. He sang not for attention, but from the depths of his soul, songs that once filled his tiny home when his father was still alive. His father, a street musician himself, had taught Miguel every chord, every lyric, and every emotion behind the music. But cancer had stolen him away a year ago, leaving Miguel with nothing but memories and melodies. Each day, Miguel performed for strangers who rushed past, some tossing a few coins into his plastic cup without looking, others pausing briefly, caught by the haunting beauty in his voice. Though life was harsh, Miguel's eyes gleamed with quiet determination. He wasn't just trying to survive, he was chasing a dream his father had once whispered to him: "Your voice will take you places, son. Just never stop singing." At sunset, Miguel would pack up and return to a makeshift shelter made of plywood and tarps, where he lived with his mother. The slum was noisy and overcrowded, but she always greeted him with a tired smile and a warm embrace. They shared simple meals, laughed about small things, and held tightly to one another through the dark nights. Before sleeping on a flattened cardboard mat, Miguel often looked up at the stars through holes in the roof. He would turn to his mother and whisper, "One day, Mom, I'll make you proud. I'll sing on a real stage, like the ones we saw on TV. People will know my name, not because I was poor, but because I believed." Despite the hunger and the hardship, Miguel held on to that belief. In a world that had taken much from him, music was the one thing it couldn't steal. Every note he sang on that street corner was a tribute, to his father's memory, to his mother's sacrifice, and to the dream that burned inside him. He didn't know how or when, but he knew one day, his voice would carry him far beyond the slums of Manila. One humid morning in Manila, Miguel sat up on his usual street corner, tuning his battered guitar with calloused fingers. He closed his eyes and began to sing, his voice cutting through the noise of traffic and vendors shouting for customers. His song was raw and honest, soaked in every hardship he'd endured. Among the crowd was a local TV producer who had stopped at a nearby food cart for breakfast. The man froze mid-bite, listening intently. There was something about the boy's voice, an ache, a truth that demanded attention. He watched Miguel finish his song and drop his gaze to the coins in his cup, clearly unaware of his own gift. The producer approached slowly, careful not to startle the boy. "Hey, kid," he said gently. Miguel looked up, wary. "Your voice, it's special. Have you ever thought about singing on TV?" Miguel blinked in confusion, not sure if it was a joke. The man handed him a flyer for the biggest talent show in the country. "They're holding auditions this week. I think you should try." Miguel's heart slammed in his chest. A real stage? A real chance? The idea was terrifying, but the dream was stronger. That night, he showed the flyer to his mother. She cried softly, touching his cheek, telling him his father would be so proud. They had nothing to spare for travel, so Miguel made a painful decision. He sold his guitar, the last thing his father left him, to buy bus fare to the city. On the day of the audition, Miguel arrived at the grand venue wearing a borrowed button-down shirt 2 sizes too big and pants held up with string. He watched other contestants in designer clothes, rehearsing with professional vocal coaches. He felt small, like a fraud, clutching the audition number in his trembling hand. But he remembered his promise to his mother and his father's words, "Just never stop singing." He took a deep breath, wiped the sweat from his brow, and stepped toward the line for auditions, determined that no one would leave without hearing his heart. Miguel waited backstage, nerves rattling his thin frame as he heard the muffled roar of the audience beyond the curtain. When his number was called, he walked slowly into the spotlight, swallowing hard. The theater was massive, every seat filled. He could see the judges' table ahead, their polished smiles faltering as they noticed his ragged shoes and oversized borrowed shirt. He heard whispers ripple through the crowd, doubting him before he'd even opened his mouth. The music cue chimed. It was Hotel California. He gripped the microphone so tightly his knuckles whitened, then closed his eyes. He remembered singing with his father on the dusty floor of their old shanty, remembered his mother's tired eyes brimming with hope. When he began to sing, it wasn't just notes. It was the ache of hunger, the grief of loss, the unbreakable love of family. His voice quivered but didn't fail, rising with raw, haunting beauty that poured straight from his heart. The audience, noisy seconds ago, fell silent. Even the judges stopped writing notes or whispering to each other. Every word he sang seemed to carve itself into the room. As the chorus soared, his voice cracked under the weight of emotion, but he kept going. Tears pooled in the eyes of strangers who saw their own struggles in his song. The final note lingered in stunned silence before the entire crowd erupted in applause and sobs. One of the judges, eyes streaming, pushed back her chair, stood up trembling, and slammed the golden buzzer with all her might. The theater exploded in cheers as gold confetti burst from the ceiling, raining down on Miguel in shimmering waves. He dropped to his knees, clutching the microphone, tears streaming freely. The reality of it hit him all at once. He wasn't just a street boy anymore. He was seen. He was heard. He covered his face with shaking hands and sobbed into the mic, voice cracking as he managed to gasp, thank you so much." The judges rushed to the stage to hug him, the crowd still roaring. In that moment, Miguel wasn't poor or forgotten. He was a star. Miguel's audition spread like wildfire across social media. Within hours, the video was shared by news outlets around the world, its title screaming of hope and wonder, "Poor Filipino boy sings, Hotel California, judges cry, smash golden buzzer." Millions watched the moment he fell to his knees under the golden confetti, moved by the raw power of a voice that spoke for every child who had ever dreamed beyond poverty. People everywhere felt something deep stir in them when they saw his tears. Donations poured in from strangers who recognized their own hardships in Miguel's eyes. Messages of encouragement arrived from every corner of the globe. From wealthy donors who offered to fund his education to musicians offering free lessons. With the money, Miguel did the unthinkable. He bought his mother a small house, sturdy and safe, with a real bed and a roof that didn't leak when it rained. He enrolled in school for the first time in years, determined to learn even while he kept singing. But now, he wasn't performing on dusty street corners, he was in professional recording studios, laying down tracks with seasoned producers, his voice finally given the platform it deserved. Through it all, he never forgot the man who had first stopped to listen. One day, standing outside his new home with his mother watching proudly from the doorway, Miguel held his phone tight and called the producer. When the man picked up, Miguel tried to speak but only managed a sob. Finally, voice breaking, he whispered, "You saved us." On the other end, the producer wiped his own eyes, replying simply, "No, Miguel. You saved yourself. I just gave you a chance to be heard." It was a new life, one built on hope, kindness, and the belief that a single moment of compassion can change everything. Months passed, and Miguel's life blossomed in ways he'd only dared to imagine. He recorded songs, studied hard, and watched his mother smile in their new home every morning. But there was one promise he felt he had to keep, returning to the stage where everything changed. The producers invited him back as a guest performer for the live finale. When he stepped onto that vast stage again, the lights didn't blind him this time, they felt warm, welcoming. The crowd roared with recognition, many standing to applaud before he even spoke. The judges smiled wide, eyes wet with pride at how far he'd come. Miguel took the microphone and looked out over the sea of faces, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Thank you," he said softly, but it rang through the hushed theater. "Thank you to the judges who gave me a chance. Thank you to everyone who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." He paused, eyes scanning the audience. "But most of all, thank you for showing me that kindness can change everything. Please, don't look away from those who need help. You never know what someone's capable of if you just give them a chance. A hush fell as the music started. He began to sing once more, his voice richer, stronger, but still carrying that same honest ache that had first silenced the world. Midway through, something beautiful happened, the audience joined him. Thousands of voices rose together, filling the theater in a unified chorus that transcended language or background. Even the judges wiped their eyes as they sang along, their hands over their hearts. In that moment, there were no rich or poor, no strangers or skeptics, just people bound by one shared truth, that compassion has the power to transform lives. Miguel's eyes shone with tears, but he kept singing, his voice soaring higher than ever before, carrying hope and gratitude into every corner of the world.